Well, thank you for giving me a few moments on your agenda. I know that you've got some important conversations, a lot of very important information, but I did want to take a few minutes here at the top of the conversation to at least discuss, I think, the big picture. One of the things I was really excited about when I saw the poll were the number of faculty and library faculty that are participating in this discussion today and that are among our champions for this open educational resources push and thinking about affordable learning. That really is going to be the key. One of the things I had a meeting this morning where I was talking with several on the leadership team about trying to find ways that we can make certain that from a student standpoint that we get the highest quality resources into their hands and into their support system, and that we be able to find a way to make these things the utility of them, the ease of use, the ease of adoption and adaptation as easy as possible for the faculty. And you're going to be a very important part of that conversation. I'm delighted that we're doing this as a part of the Open Education Week. I think having this conversation about stretching the boundaries of OER, the direction that it's going, one of the things that many of you have, like me, been in conversations for well over a decade and trying to think about how open source or adapted materials can impact the classroom and the learning environment. The technologies are starting to catch up to where some of those things that we wished a decade ago that we might be able to do now really are possible. And in some ways, it's a celebration of technological barriers coming down for this. You probably are aware that the Board of Regents has adopted as a central piece of its strategic plan for 2013 through 2018 those core tenets of the Complete College Georgia initiative. The USG strategic imperative number one is that of academic excellence and degree completion. And for those of you that have been a part of the conversations around whether it be Complete College Georgia or the immediate predecessor of that, and really at the heart of Complete College Georgia is advancing the retention, progression, and graduation work that you and your teams on the campuses have been involved with. We wanted to make certain that we had a core component of the strategic plan, and this academic excellence and degree completion really represents where Complete College Georgia and RPG have become the foundation of that plan going forward. One component of that strategic plan and that completion agenda is being able to position our system and our campuses and our departments within the campuses to be able to develop new, flexible, and affordable degree options. One of the things that some of you have heard me speak before that I'm quite passionate about the fact that we have got to continue to find a way that Georgians can see a role in the university system. Certainly not casting any aspersions on the decisions that have been made about resource allocations and what that's done to tuition and fees. But if you look over the last decade, we've very quickly crept up to where it's difficult to see that we've got an affordable option for Georgians. We have got to think about taking apart the total cost. Where are there opportunities whereby we might be able to offer some assistance to students? We're convinced that the open educational resources, thinking about textbook, thinking about learning modules, thinking about things that can be supplemental to existing texts and perhaps control costs are going to be a very important component of that going forward. You probably are aware that we're also, today you're going to hear more about this partnership with the California State University System and partnering with their Affordable Learning Solutions project. I am committed, as I engage with my counterparts, the chief academic officers or the provost for various systems around the country, looking for other places where we might partner with other systems. We talked very openly about some early conversations that we're having with the SUNY and the CUNY systems in New York, with the Minnesota system, some conversations we've had very early on with the University of Texas system about partnering in these areas. Today, though certainly we're talking about a manifestation of one of those conversations, and that is really looking to see how we might build out an Affordable Learning Georgia platform that can really be the symbolic as well as substantive repository and referatory for these tools. At the heart of moving forward is going to be identifying places where we can leverage affordable resources. Many of you are already open source participants. Many of you are already involved in repository projects and referatory projects in which you look to leverage your library resources and your learning support resources on your campus against other consortia. We certainly want to think about how the University System of Georgia and our Galileo network can become an integral partner with other systems. Pardon the sirens that just went by, you probably heard. It's Atlanta. The tools that we can leverage to think about what we have from an OER standpoint against other tools and other resources will be critical. I've always felt like in the OER world, if you're willing to come forward with your repository, your referatory, then you have a ticket to the party to be able to talk with others that have those tools. We know that we have access to a broad base of resources, and we do think that we can grow, but at the heart of it is how can we start thinking about how those tools can be used to impact the affordability, both for students as well as the faculty. Accessibility is going to be very important. Any of you that have heard me talk about OER and really stretching the boundaries know that we are very fortunate to have a good foundation in our state, both in terms of the AMAC tools as well as things that you on your campuses are doing from an accessibility, but it's beyond just ADA compliance. We're talking about access, being access to the tools for learning, and many times that does come into learning objects that are integrating the courses. It certainly plays itself out in textbook. We want to be able to leverage affordable, access-driven, high-quality initiatives that can in turn lead to value. My colleague, the provost at the University of Oklahoma, cited for me a study that they had recently done in which 42% of their freshman class had neglected to buy one or more textbooks because of cost. I would suspect that if we were to do a survey like...
David.
Pardon me? I suspect that if we were to do a survey such as that on a number of our campuses, we would find similar results. And talking with the faculty council at their meeting just a couple of weekends ago over in Milledgeville, there was quite a bit of talk among the faculty senate representatives that were there about how frustrating it can be when they hear about students neglecting to buy textbooks, and that certainly is not advancing learning. So talking about accessibility and it not just being able to connect a person to the tool, but also removing some of the financial barriers to make that accessibility possible choice for students. And to the idea of choice, this cannot be seen as a mandate. It's not. Quite candidly, I tell any faculty when I talk about the OER world that there are some textbooks that I had in my courses that much as they are, I looked at them as sacred texts. They were the texts that if my students in public policy, if they were not exposed to that book, then they were not a whole person. They certainly were not moving forward in the discipline. But one thing that I always also acknowledge that there were other texts and required materials that I would have in my syllabus that quite candidly, the students would only draw from maybe 10%, 25% of the time. If there was some way for me to be able to, as a faculty member, and then looking at my role in this initiative, to make it easy on the faculty member to perhaps use the ISBN number for the textbook that is, again, the book that you are not going to eliminate, but maybe to be able to search through a federated search of all the OER materials, again, the networks that we can work USG and Galileo into, to be able to search for both open text, learning support modules, looking for other tools that can be integrated in courses. Perhaps I could have saved my students from having to buy those second and third textbooks. But in the end, we want that to be the faculty's choice. Again, I'll go back to my conversation with faculty council a couple of weeks ago where we talked about this very topic. We see a lot of potential in being able to work through our academic discipline groups. I mean, I would really love to put it to our physics faculty system-wide to what is it that they will, again, know the trends that are going on within the OER topics as it relates to physics, text, and other learning objects. Be able to put it to that group to be able to help us, steer us toward those things that can help them to advance this cause. But by all means, it's going to be a mix of traditional faculty authored e-textbooks, rental program, library resources. All of those things are the tools in our toolkit that we can draw from, but we certainly want to be able to advance that open world as far as possible. The charge that we really are giving to you is we appreciate. I'm overwhelmed by the participation in this to this point. We really would like for you to be a go-between. We'd like for you to be able to be an advocate for those things that we determine as a group are going to be the priorities going forward. In some ways, you will have to help us determine where those priorities might reside. We certainly want to build out this ALG network to be one in which we can share openly. We certainly do that in higher education. We're not shy about, from our peer institutions around the country and within the state, begging and borrowing and stealing, being able to share know-how back and forth. I think that will be a critical relationship. I think that you can be a critical linkage on your campus to faculty choices of material. And again, prioritizing those things that the faculty on your campus are most interested in pursuing. I would hope that we might be able to identify some of the disciplines that are most interested in, both on your campus and then system-wide, and then see if we can't tie together those efforts and then provide some support for that. And then we also are going to be dependent upon you to give us very frank feedback. Everybody that's worked with me, I think, knows that I absolutely positively like for folks to call it the way it is. Never, when you go into any new initiative, is everything going to be magic bullet material. There's no way that we're looking to replace, but how can we supplement? How can we advance the cause? That is one of the goals that I have. And being able to do that means taking advantage of the good, the bad, and the ugly in the project. Your frank feedback, you'll be our network to be able to do that. And one other thing that we're really excited about that you'll be able to help us do, and I'm knocking on a little wood as I share this with you, you probably are aware that Governor Deal put into his budget this year $2.5 million that was in the name of putting that money into a reinvestment pool for Galileo. But that was with the idea that we would be, how can those funds help advance our work in the open source world? How can those funds be able to help, especially to ramp up and accelerate our progress toward trying to identify more affordable resources, toward maybe even being able to leverage some of our discipline groups that do want to get into adoption and adaptation of some e-text for use by the faculty in that discipline system-wide. We want to make that a priority. Priority is a key word in that, though, because you can help us to firm up what will be the priorities very early on. We're excited that amount of money was included in the House budget, and it's right now, knock on wood, it appears that the Senate budget is retaining that. So all things are looking like once the budget appropriations bill goes to conference, that money will still be intact. The good news is that that's some resources for us to really be able to work with, again, an accelerant to these efforts. The bad news is we'll be expected to be able to produce quickly. So thus, it'll be very important for us to identify projects and tools that are underway and under use on your campuses, and how can we make certain to accelerate our work in that area. And I'll be working with Meryl and Lauren and the Galileo team to help learn where those priorities are and see where in the first 6 months or so of those resources that we can make the greatest progress and do the greatest good. So we come to you certainly asking for your help and your participation. Excuse me, I'll take that back one more slide. I shouldn't have advanced. We know that you're very busy. We know that you have a million things to do already. The fact that you've taken of your time to participate in this conversation today is evidence of how dedicated you are to the work of your campus and to our system. We really want you to feel like you're participating in something that can be a game changer. We want this to be something that is useful, and a high degree of utility and ease of use for our faculty. We want this to be something that can advance the cause that many of you that are directly involved in libraries in terms of getting learning and research materials in the hands of students and faculty and the staff that are sorely needed them. And we absolutely know that this can be a game changer for students. We have to do something about cost in our state. We cannot leave a segment of the population feeling like they're on the outside looking in when it comes to educational opportunities in the university system in Georgia. I appreciate your commitment to it, and I appreciate you giving me a few minutes here at the top of your meeting. Thank you.